4 years ago, on this very day, I made The Forever Woman, my first ever Flash animation on Newgrounds. This was also a few months before I started uni. Before I play this creator's commentary, I will play the full video for people who either haven't seen it or can't remember what happened.
If you wish to find out why you are made immortal, come to the Valkyrie building at 9 p.m. Stop. Switch to thermal vision. It's her. Call the boss. She's here. Very good. Send her to my office immediately. Yes, sir. So we need to rest. I don't want much.
Freeze! I said freeze!
The first thing to mention is the caption that says Remastered Edition. There was another version of the video shown at my college art exhibition about 1 week before the Newgrounds release. There was also concept art, and this poster on display. I made this when I was too inept to print posters with the picture the same size as a sheet of paper. I won't be showing the entire original version here, as many of the scenes are identical to the Newgrounds version, but edited in a different order. That said, there are a few key scenes that were changed enough to be worth showing. This shot shows a howitzer cannon firing before the shed explodes. The opening narration from the Newgrounds version was originally showing this room with a letter in it. I got rid of most of these scenes as I felt all this exposition would be too slow paced for a Newgrounds video. Also, the scene where she meets the guards didn't have voices, so it just showed text captions instead of the dialogue. The original villain speech was drastically changed, so I will show the whole scene. I will apologise for the awful sound quality, but at the time I only had a terrible microphone bought for $5.
Sweet fast. I don't want much.
I do regret taking out the line where he says, "Will you join me?" as the story makes much more sense if he says that just before she attacks. It means that she is answering the question with her actions. Even now, I don't know why I took it out. Hopefully this explains the plot better for people who didn't really understand what happened. Before I explain my thoughts about the final Newgrounds version, I'll also show you some deleted scenes. Here's a set of storyboards from a totally different story involving the destruction of the human race, with the Forever Woman being the only survivor. I never really got far with this story, so I couldn't make many of the scenes shown here. There was also another early prototype version, more like the final one, involving a sinister panning shot with narration captions. I noticed that most people didn't like the first music track from Ocarina of Time. I picked it simply because it makes me think of scheming and mischief, which I thought was fitting for the ridiculous voice of the villain. Also, because his voice was recorded with the really cheap microphone I mentioned previously, I added a lot of echoes to hide how bad the quality is. I also really like the wonky lights on some of the buildings in the panning shot, and the fact that the cinematography is nonsensical. It pans towards the Valkyr building, fades out from it, and then fades right back into it again, with a completely unnecessary caption telling you stuff you already know. But I will mention one of the best shots in the entire thing, namely the exploding shed, which judging from the debris didn't have anything inside it. The name of the Valkyr Corporation was another thing people mentioned, as it related to this music from the original Max Payne. I don't think it's a particularly good name simply because it's rather awkward to say in dialogue, and you have to explain what it means. You'll also see that the villain's name is written on the door here, and he's only called I Am Richard Than You because it sounds like a stupid pun of I am richer than you. Another pointless fact is that his microphone looks like the awful microphone I used to record some of the dialogue, before I got a better quality dictaphone to record the guards and his dialogue in this scene. The main reason that the guards have quite bad voice acting is that whenever I would say the lines more forcefully, the sound would get crackly and distorted. Obviously I should have used a pop filter, but I didn't know that at the time. There's another thing I should probably explain about the villain speech, and that is the surreal visuals going on at the time. I didn't convey this very well, but he is in fact projecting holograms in this scene. Not entirely sure why, maybe as some sort of intimidation tactic or something. The fatality scene is probably the best part, although I've since learnt how to do better blood splatter effects that don't disappear right after spurting out. After she's finished and holds a dramatic pose for no real reason, she gets ambushed by 10 guards who we know by now pose no threat. I do like how they all use the same type of gun but have many different cocking sounds. As I explained before, I couldn't really record good voices for the guards, so I just used a voice clip from Resident Evil 4. Also, it's impossible to know who is talking here, so your guess is as good as mine. I'm also surprised nobody spotted the amazingly stupid continuity errors, where the arrangement of doors in the corridor keeps changing between shots. If you follow where she walked, the CEO office should be here and the conference room should be here, but they both disappeared in the final shot. Those are most of the specific points I can think of, so I'll finish with an overall conclusion. The story is rather silly and has glaring plot holes. If the Valkyr Corporation can make people immortal using some sort of unknown technology, I Am Richard Than You, that name is so stupid to say out loud, could just make himself immortal and not risk being betrayed by someone else. I'm assuming that most people thought this was a serious story because of the really dark visual style and sci-fi setting. But then, you do hear the silly voice acting within 5 seconds. I don't think the design of the Forever Woman really conveys the fact that she is a cyborg, other than this shot when they show her in thermal vision, and when she uses grapple beams and Tesla coils in the fatality scene. In fact, I'd say she looks more like a demon. In keeping with this thought, here's a concept drawing where she has demonic-looking wings. I suppose I could have gone with her being a summoned demon, but that would have meant changing everything about the setting. That's not to say that sci-fi and fantasy can never mix, but it's something that needs to be done with a lot of skill. That about sums up this commentary. I hope it was helpful to everyone confused by the many unusual design choices I made. As a final note, I will say that overall I'm satisfied that on my first attempt at a Flash animation on Newgrounds, I achieved mediocre scores, which in practical terms means I'm halfway to being a master animator. Or rather, that's where I was 4 years ago.